falsehood, you're faced with two options. You can accept it or you can reject it. The basis upon which we take one of these actions is a product of our critical thinking capabilities and a desire to know what is true instead of confirming our bias. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. On Brainstorm, we choose the hard truths over the comforting lies. Reason, compassion, skepticism. This is the Brainstorm Podcast.
To those listening weekly, welcome to the Brainstorm Rectable, the Brainstorm production where we spend some time discussing one topic or many, depending on the way the conversation flows. This is an open brainstorming session where I kick things off with some thoughts, and we'll see where we go from there. I'm Corey, and I'm joined by Lisa.
Hello.
Leo.
Hey there.
And Renee.
Hello.
We're broadcasting from Lisa's apartment in Regina, Saskatchewan, and today is August 31st, 2018. So today I wanted to ask the question, should we speak ill of the dead?
You know what? I was listening to Pod Save America, and they were talking about this, and because you're obviously talking about John McCain,
Right?
And the way I think about it is, well, let's wait till he's at least buried before we totally, And the way they put it, and I kind of agreed with them, is that you can criticize. You can criticize his policy choices, but you also have to kind of acknowledge the man that he was.
Right.
Because I don't think you should deify or demonize a guy. I think, and that's the problem is it seems to be, and especially with McCain dying or whatever, that's the way it seems to be going. He's either a saint or a Satan himself. And it's like, neither one was true.
Something that I saw was, obviously we would have in the past criticized him for various choices and policy calls along the way. And then when he died, the media kind of almost like lionized him and had that saint type of mentality. And I saw a few people really going hard on it. But then I saw a few people just being like, okay, well, yeah, maybe he shouldn't be lionized. Maybe we shouldn't be sanctifying this guy like so much. And then people were saying that those people, the people who were just being like, hey, he voted this way, this wasn't cool. And they were saying, oh, well, quit dancing on his grave to those people, which seemed really odd to me.
I felt more conflicted when Rob Ford died. Because I didn't really find anything redeemable in that guy. So I kind of felt best to just say nothing at all or say, well, you feel bad for his daughter or whatever. But other than that, you just can't even, because McCain, okay, yeah, he was through and through conservative, but he had some, he was a real, I don't know, when he ran against Obama, it was like, oh, a real candidate. It was like, if even he gets elected, at least he's like, he's no Trump.
Right.
He's not even a Bush.
The difference, I've watched a few things where they're talking about McCain, and they said what he was probably one of the last human politicians because when he did, yes, he was a war hawk, which makes sense. He was a military man through and through, but when he made policy choices, and if he thought they were mistakes, he would own up to them. And when it went against his own personal ideas, he did go against the policy. Now we're so used to politicians, flip-flopping, because it's Tuesday, it does make him, I think it made him a different kind of politician. Now, he was in politics for 30 some years?
Yeah.
And he was a very staunch conservative. So there's going to be policy choices that if you're not conservative, you're not going to agree with them. But
I think that the one thing that people pretty much, most of the things that floated around the internet totally ignored, or at least to a large extent, is try to leave policy out of it. If you don't attack, the policy didn't die. McCain died.
Yeah.
So
that's fair.
And I think people jump on the wagon right away. Okay, so is this mine or is this the other one? And there are no other wagons. There's only two. So people, that's the first point of contact. Was he one of us or one of them? And I think that's kind of the mistake. But I do think what Renee, kind of what you said, he had integrity, the point where he was at least honest with himself. And that's one thing that I respect in politicians, regardless of stripe. If you were at least true to yourself and like not like some of the other guys that'll just say whatever is convenient today. Yeah. And I think he did have more of that than a lot of other politicians. If you just take the policies out of it, like he had a shitload of bad ideas. But he was true to the bad ideas.
Right.
And like so that's
his campaign against Obama was almost like the last real campaign, like the last genuine presidential campaign that's happened. Like, cause I mean, Romney was so phony. Right. It was so, he was just so unlikable and so, Richie rich Mormon weirdo. Like it was just so hard. Like he didn't seem genuine. And I mean, that really, like the Obama versus McCain, obviously there was actual disagreement there, but they also seemed to respect each other as candidates and human beings. And I didn't really get that sense much in the Trump versus Clinton election. I don't know if you guys
I don't know why.
And that's the one clip that they played a lot on the news, at least, like where John McCain says that, I think Obama's a good man. I think he's a good family man.
Right.
And that, like a lot of people are like, that's why he lost the election. But I think that kind of reflected that he was able to be like, like my opponent's not Satan.
But Obama would have said that too about him. You know what I mean? It's not like, so I don't think that would have cost him the election.
Yeah. No, I don't think it did. But I think it showed the character that some politicians have it, like where they can be like, he's not Satan, but I do want to win this election. Whereas some of them are just like, they'll pull out the dirtiest shit they can and Obama did that to Hillary Clinton, like during the primary, like where it was fucking nasty. And that's but some of those things
I can't remember. What did he do?
Well,
example.
Pretty much treat her like, I don't remember specific quotes, but he was very, very critical of Clinton to the point where it almost seemed like she was a Republican. Like the way the ads would run, like in the primary. Just look up some of the primary ads, like that or some of the headline statements that were. But
I don't know, because I'm not a person who like, I don't know, plays nice with others.
The question, I think the question with McCain is, can you respect the man but not agree with him at all?
Well, but would or can't the way I look at it is, are we allowed to be honest about the way we feel about people?
I think,
like if he's dead, okay, I didn't like him before. I'm not going to pretend I liked him after.
True. I think there should be a slight bit of courtesy in that. At least let him get buried first. I
don't know. I don't do that for regular people. Why would I do that for a politician?
It's like the difference.
You wouldn't go protest at his funeral and upset his family or whatever. You know
right,
what I mean?
But I might post on Facebook that so and so is dead and I don't care, or good riddance.
I guess there's a
I've done it in the past. I lost a few friends.
Yeah. I guess it depends on how nasty the guy is. Like, I mean, when Trump dies, I don't think there's going to be many tears.
Right. Like if I say, okay, good riddance, he's dead, the world's better off without him, are we going to be like, oh, well, wait till he's in the ground, Corey?
Well,
okay, like when Rob...
that might be a little harsh, but yeah. I mean,
when Rob Ford died, I think that was a good thing for Ontario politics. Because now he couldn't possibly get elected again and do horrible things.
Right.
So now I don't wish him. I certainly he died very young, which was very tragic, and he had a young daughter,
which is obviously
sad. Terrible, and he had a terrible form of cancer, which would have been very painful and not fun to go through. I mean, so I don't wish that on anyone.
Right.
But I think I would have rathered he just retired, or like I don't need him to die. Like he could have just not been in politics and I wouldn't have given a shit, right? So like I don't wish him malice or wish him to be dead. However, I'm not going to go and say, oh yeah, he was a great guy. When Rob Ford, I couldn't believe the shit people were saying about how great he was. I'm like, look, 40-something-year-olds shouldn't die of stomach cancer. Like, that's awful. But like, no.
Stop pretending he's a hero.
I mean, I think that's the thing though, is for whatever reason we line it. Like, I mean, all I could think of is when I saw this as a topic was think of all the that everyone had when here in Saskatchewan, Brad Wall stepped down. Oh, thank you, Mr. Wall. You're the greatest premier since Tommy Douglas. And it's like, just like,
I remember when Stephen Harper lost the election, finally.
Yeah. And
somebody was like, we should name the Calgary airport after him. Blah, blah, blah. And I remember it was like a thing, right?
Yeah.
And I was reading a CBC News article on it, and the top comment, which was also my favorite comment, said, only the departure gates.
Yeah.
I would have supported that, but it's just like, come on, people. Like,
Yeah.
But when we have people in power, we seem to have this really weird selective memory. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, Ronald Reagan, he has an airport named after him. He has this, that, and the other thing. But if you actually look at what Reagan did, it's kind of a fuck up.
there's a lot of awful shit in there. Yeah.
Kind of garbage.
He was kind of a fuck up. Like, but we selectively.
Didn't he increase the national debt?
By
quite a lot. The whole.
Yeah, by this disturbing amount and
South American dictators involved
fucked up every invasion he touched,
like straight up like trickle down capitalism.
Reaganomics.
Yeah. So a very, very ideological in a way that is pretty clearly.
Which brings us around to McCain, who thought of Reagan as his mentor, and
that's a valid criticism.
So the one thing I wanted to say on that point, though, people it doesn't really matter what they do, because again, you have it so divided that one side, this is our hero, true. That's Satan,
right?
And that's what it doesn't matter what the people do. It's if kind of this grandiose image of a hero somehow gets formed that, this is the new guy, this is the great guy.
Right.
Doesn't matter what he does. He could fuck sheep wherever he wants to.
Trump does it.
Or
I'm starting that rumor now.
Or he shoots people on Fifth Avenue and fucks sheep.
That's right.
What's that maritime artist from the 50s, the folk singer, who said in one of his concerts that Scottish people have a certain affinity for sheep? I think Trump is Scottish.
Well, it could be.
Actually, I believe his mother was.
Yeah, I know he. Yeah.
Straight from.
There you go.
But I mean, that's just it. It's like, I don't know. There's like McCain, I think, is kind of a weird. It's kind of a weird polarized, like, because there's elements to respect of the man, but he did. Yeah, he was. There was a lot of policies he made that were choices that I wouldn't agree with. So.
But I think it comes down, like, I actually always felt like I respected him, even though I may not agree with his position on a certain. I mean, I respected him because, like, he never really seemed to be dirty. He said what he thought about Trump, which, I mean, almost nobody in the Republican Party is really standing up to that idiot, even though I'm sure they all know that, and believe that he's an idiot. Like, they're just too terrified of their base. Paul Ryan being the most. But I mean, Mitt Romney, right? Like that dinner he had with him. Oh God! Like, I mean, like, it's. Anyways, so I mean, I feel like I think, and
that's just it. Is with McCain because I mean, he crashed like the Vietnam War. Like, he was a prisoner of war. I mean, the Vietnam War was a clusterfuck of a war, but he was in the Hanoi Hilton. He had a chance to leave early and he didn't take it. He stuck it out with the rest of them. Yeah. There's elements of the man that you can respect. There's also elements that are you can be critical. And I think,
don't you prefer soldiers who didn't get captured?
I also prefer soldiers that don't get 5 fucking deferments. Captain Bone Spur.
Yeah.
Calling, not getting STDs as your own personal Vietnam. Fuck off.
What a guy. Yeah, I don't know. I was recently at a funeral and I noticed this at funerals, people speak only of the good things that people do. And I was saying, like, to Stephanie, I said, like, that seems dishonest to me to some degree. Like, I hope that people can be realistic about the person that I was when I'm dead.
Oh, it's going to be like a roast at your funeral. Like straight up. Like, don't even,
let's be honest.
So what was with this guy and his tomato juice?
No, I think it kind of depends how well you know somebody. Like,
what's the deal with Tory and Bud Light?
Like when my grandfather died, I certainly didn't have a problem saying, well, he wasn't perfect with what, like, cause I knew him. But like, if I go to a funeral of somebody I barely know, or I never knew, and I know some, like, I went to a funeral for a guy's, I know his brother. I've never met the brother, but I know the guy. So I went, and, I don't know, like, from what I knew about his brother, he didn't seem like the best guy ever, but I mean, like, I wasn't going to say anything because, like, it's his funeral, his mother's suffering, and it's just, they're sad. And I just, for politeness, I just.
And it's also one of those things that there's a big difference between saying it at the funeral and saying it when you don't know the people, or you're not at the funeral. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that guy was a piece of shit. Not at the funeral. Like, as George Carlin would say it, there's some things you don't say all the time. And I think, like, there's a time and place for certain.
Carlin.
Oh, thank you. But there's certain times, like, where you don't say stuff, even though, if Donald Trump died, I wouldn't go to the funeral and just poo-poo on the guy necessarily, unless they allowed me, I might. But
yeah,
the problem is that lineup is going to be around the block.
Yeah. But there's certain places where you don't poo-poo a person necessarily, even though they were despicable, for respect of his family members who might not be shitheads. So, like,
I don't think Donald Trump has any of those.
Well, so let's just use somebody else. But if you
he has a son who's a child.
That's true.
The kid may not be very nice, but he's still a child.
Yeah, and there's certain people that are nice.
Yeah, we'll see what he's like when he becomes a grown up. Eh?
And there's also some of his sons are just too dumb to understand what's happening.
That's true.
So for out of respect for those guys as well, I guess, like
they don't know what's
clueless.
happening. Yeah.
Why is he making fun of Daddy like that? Shut up, Eric.
When my dad had cancer, I had to confront the potential for being asked to eulogize him. And I could never make myself come up with anything that wasn't at least honest. Did
you watch the movie Trainwreck? Because what's her name?
Oh yeah, I have watched.
Lady,
Amy Schumer.
Amy Schumer, yeah, gives this great eulogy for. He was an asshole. Out of all these people, who here was offended by my father at least once? And like every hand goes up. But but still, I cared about him. Like, it went on. It was. I thought that was something like that was good.
Yeah, it's like because everybody's made up of good parts and bad parts, but
not me, but everyone else. Yeah.
Yeah.
All of us here are perfect.
Well, okay, you three can.
We're gonna roast you so bad at your funeral.
Good.
I'm like, and he's not even in heaven to look down on us because he was an atheist. Ha ha.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess that's John McCain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's been some other nasty stuff with McCain too. Like apparently someone put it on Twitter. They they photoshopped the gun towards his daughter at the funeral. Like it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, she's kind of trash, but I would never meme somebody shooting her. You know?
It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know. To me, he didn't agree with his policies, but I don't think McCain quite deserves that kind of ire.
Yeah.
But, like I said,
I don't care who it is. I don't think anybody's child, adult or not, should be pulled into that. I mean, that's not them. You are responsible for things you do. Yeah. You're not responsible for things your parents do.
No. I don't know. Like I said, I think you don't need to demonize nor deify a person. And I think there is a time and place when you critique. If you're wanting to critique their legacy, then, let the funeral go first and then critique their legacy.
Can I just say, I think atheism for me plays a role in here because, like, I I try to treat people with respect, even if I don't agree with them, whatever, whether they're alive, okay, or dead. However, I don't treat them with respect when they're dead for them because I think they're dead.
And
I do it for their loved ones. And,
ultimately, it's for the family.
So I don't. So I don't really. So to me, it's like I don't care about speaking ill of the dead because I think there's any superstition there, or
they don't know,
right? Exactly, right. Like to me, a funeral is fine to have, but it's not for the dead person. It's for the people left behind.
It's
in the same way that you would respect the person.
It's a ritual of closure for the family.
Yeah. Humans like to do it.
Yeah. It's no matter the culture, everyone dies.
That's
so
very wise.
I listened to a recent episode of Sean Carroll's podcast, Mindscape, and he had a person from the death positivity movement, and they talk about like being positive about dying, even though they don't believe in life after death and whatnot. And it was really interesting. And she went into some of the history of like why we have open caskets and how embalming used to be in people's living rooms. And
well, for some reasons popped my head. I think it was partly where you were saying how, you don't want to, sometimes they eulogize, even though if they're a complete and utter asshole, everyone tries to say nice things about them. Like I did an anthropology of religion, or it was about rituals.
Okay.
And I did one on basically vampires, right? The ritual of why people do certain things when people die. And the ritual in this Greek village was they would bury you for like 5 years, and then they would ritually dig up your body to see how you were judged. And then if you were judged to go into heaven, you were reinterred in the village crypt, right? So now you've become part of ancestors and whatever else. But there was an example in it. It was that there was one guy who was a total asshole. He was a drunk and a wife beater and all these other things. And because they were so scared of what they called the Viracoccus, or basically zombie / vampire, was that they actually let him sit for an extra couple of years just to make sure his body was decomposing, because that's how they judged it. If they dug it up and the body wasn't really decomposing, they're like, oh shit.
Okay.
Right. Because then God hadn't accepted him, and then, and this is a problem. But because they knew he was a total asshole, they purposely delayed
you got a couple extra years to get over it.
They delayed the ritual for a couple of years just to make sure. And I just thought it was kind of funny, kind of fitting. And, and I think that's how it is people, even if the guy's the biggest asshole, there's this weird idea of civility that you can't.
It's amazing how weird people get about that stuff. Oh, you can't do this to my, loved one's body, blah, blah. I'm just like, I mean, like,
mind you, I think death itself is weird because no, like my cousins,
this is where it gets dark.
But anyway, when their dad died of brain cancer about 10 or 12 years ago now. Anyway, they just eulogized the man, and like, he was kind of a dick, but they put him on this pedestal. Right. It always struck me as kind of odd. So, I mean,
I don't know.
But I have been to funerals, and these were of the highly religious sort, the kind of hardcore evangelical type things.
Okay.
And I've been to funerals where, let's say, for example, the one that I can recall was of somebody who, like a teenager who died drinking and driving.
Okay.
A lot of those teenagers do not have a very good reputation in church, but since their parents go to church, you get buried in the fucking church cemetery.
Right.
But I've actually heard pastors just say, yeah, he did not lead a life according to God, and we know where people like that go. And I've heard a person say this in a church. And I was pretty young when I heard it, but even at the time I was thinking that I knew this, I saw this dude, being an asshole around town, but I don't think it's necessary to say that. and I think, yeah, a lot of people are assholes, and I hate when they get elevated to like, oh, they're not. But also,
But he's gone. He's dead, right? So to me, it's just torturing his mother.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
So
she believes in hell.
If I could go into a room with this person just before he died and like, yeah, you're about to die in about 5 minutes, and I'm going to tell you what I think about you. That's different. Like if you could like really lay it on them while they could still hear it. But yeah, later on, like at the funeral, I'm like, yeah, I hate that you're glorifying this person, but at the same time, I wish you would just kind of strike a more generic tone, like, oh, he was
a person. He lived, he died.
God bless him. Goodbye. Yeah. Just be silent instead of demonizing them. But yeah,
because I think we have a different perspective though, because to us it's like guy's gone,
right? Yeah.
Like it's not real, right? And it's all just bullshit. But like to people who really believe, I mean, to have a priest say that about like a loved one, like your kid, or that's pretty awful. And because you believe that that's actually happening, like that's. I mean, he's kind of taking the opportunity to finger wag and be like, "Don't you end up like that guy?" Like, holy shit, people!
And that was a very shitty thing. Like, I remember I was pretty young. I was probably like 10 or 11 when I have a vivid memory of it. And I thought, I'm like, that is harsh, but I'm like, but at the same time, you could tell he was just doing it to preach to other people. Yeah. And so kind of using the death of Satan's spawn to get the other sheep into the fold.
How does one reconcile the idea that their child is going to hell for living an impure life and their belief in heaven and hell and God and all that? Like, how does that even reconcile?
Just become an atheist. I'll be fine.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, how else does that work?
That's how they invented purgatory.
Is that how that works?
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's the how and why.
He's there now, but he won't be there forever.
Right.
If he's a good boy.
If he's good in hell and pays his penance, right?
Yeah.
Well, I believe in the whatever it is medieval church. They made money that way, right? Because people could pay
indulgences,
to get out of hell. So and the church.
That's how many of the great churches got built. Yeah. That's how it's a monument to the fucking stupid people.
But are they're just believers? I mean, it's kind of a different.
I'm sorry. I retract that. No.
Well, I'm not saying it's a wise thing to believe. I'm just saying, like, back in the day, and there was nothing else to believe. There was no question about whether you believed in that. Like, I mean, they didn't have Brainstorm podcasts to listen to back then.
They should.
We could have really set them straight.
Yeah, we could have helped.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we could have definitely helped. All right. We'll call that the end of the Rectable.
We forgot to talk about rectums.
We did forget to talk about rectums.
No, I think we mentioned the word asshole enough that it's covered.
I guess
not to nitpick, but the asshole's not actually part of the rectum.
Part of me always still just wants to be like, okay, yeah, so-and-so was like, I mean, they were a person or whatever, but they fucked up here and they were okay here and they were good there. And just be honest about the way a person lived their life. I don't know.
And I think,
is that too far?
I think it depends. I think, let's say if you're with a group of friends and one of your friends' parent passed away and you're super close and you're comfortable talking about how, yeah, your dad was sometimes a piece of shit. Like, and if your friendship is good enough that yeah, he was a dick.
Sometimes he was a jerk.
But that's a kind of a personal thing. You don't, if the other person is not okay with you making that comment about their loved one, I think out of respect for that person, you may be like, yeah, well, I don't think he'd like if I pointed that out.
We talk a lot about like the family and how these things kind of impact them, right? So what about a stranger on the internet is never going to be seen by McCain's daughter? Like, nothing that I post is ever going to be seen by her.
Yeah. Well, that's true, but that's also where you get your internet trolls.
Well, that's true.
I mean, I guess it could be seen by her. Whatever. I mean, you could argue that some of the constituents may be grieving to some extent from the loss. I mean, but I don't think those feelings are particularly needing to be.
Yeah.
I wouldn't take the opportunity. I don't think you should. I think you should. If you're going to criticize them, just do it from a point of view of honesty and not just to pour salt in people's wounds who are upset. Like, don't just do it to
suck it, fuckers.
Yeah. Don't just do it to troll them. Do it because you truly believe honestly. This is the truth, and then I don't know. I don't have an issue with that. I feel.
But yeah, that's kind of where I was the entire time. Was like the criticisms that I supported were the ones that I thought were honest and not terribly mean-spirited.
No.
But I saw a lot of people being like, "No, you can't say anything." Well,
I don't know.
I don't agree
with
it seems
that
like
either.
not being able to say anything seems like being dishonest in a whole other way.
Yeah.
But all right, that's where we'll end the rec table. For everything else, you can check out the show notes at thebrainstormpodcast.com and our website, brainstormblog.net. Thanks to our financial supporters, Janet, Kim, Stephanie, Zach, the Utah Outcasts, Bassett, Will, Aaron, Daryl, Destin Sucks, Bob, Glenn, Destin doesn't suck that much, Magnus, several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave, Positively Skeptical, Rob, Keith, the Podunk Polymath, Larry, and now Kayla. If you want to join them and help the show grow, then you can do that at patreon.com/brainstormpodcast. Or you can go and buy some stuff at tpublic.com/stores/brainstorm-podcast-gear. You can join us every 2 weeks on brainstormradio.net. Our next live show is September 14th, and our guest will be Richard A. Kahn Jr., author of The Earthbound Parent, How and Why to Raise Your Little Angels Without Religion. I want to thank BJ again for joining us. You can find more of his stuff at bjmendelson.com. So make sure to check that out, and remember that I'm offering a copy of his book, The End of Privacy, to the first listener to contact me. Thanks to Dave for our intro music. Thanks to Aaron Rabbi from the Embrace the Void podcast for doing the intro voiceover. You can find his stuff at voidpod.com. Thanks to Alex Capper Murdoch for doing the voiceover for our ads. And thanks to Jason Camo for doing the outro music. You can find his stuff at aloststateofmind.com. All music played is either with permission or under the SOCAN license to play. For more information on SOCAN, you can check out the music license info page on our website, brainstormblog.net. Remember to give us a rating, a thumbs up, or a fave on your podcatcher of choice. Join our Facebook group, like our page, follow us on Twitter, share the show, and spread the word. Seriously, share, like, and comment on Facebook or Twitter, reply, retweet, and all that stuff. Increased engagement means more people see our stuff. Thanks for listening, and remember, the truth matters.
This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel. Any guests or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast with the possible exception of Corey, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors.